Welcome to Muddy River News This Week, furnished by Harvey's. I'm Bob Goff. Well, we're festive today because my guest is going to spend some time relaxing before he decides what his next step will be. You get to do that when you're retired, or maybe he just stays retired. I'm talking to Rob Copley, former police chief of the city of Quincy. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
Did you wake up from a nap and then come on over?
No, I didn't take a nap today.
Wow.
Getting a few things done. I'm trying to get my bearings.
How long is the list your wife has for you?
Well, it's well, I haven't actually seen it, but I know there's a lot of things.
What's she waiting for? You've been retired for like 3 or 4 days now.
Well, if you ask her, I know what they are. So.
Well, again, your service, 40 plus years to this community, of course, 18 as chief. I think, when you just tell her, he's earned a little bit of time to just, before you just dive him into the gutters and the shingles or the whatever, get a few days, right?
That's right.
All right. Has it sunk in yet that you're actually retired?
Not really. It just feels like I'm on a vacation without all the emails.
And that's got to be a welcome feeling.
It is. I pull my phone out, there's nothing there, and that's okay.
That's when you just talk to one of your boys or whatever, or Christy, and just say, hey, I'm just here. So, well, that's great. Over this time, again, you took a lot of time, making this decision and deciding to finally retire. At what point does a man in your position or anyone in your position just say, when do you know the time has come to finally step away?
Well, a good friend of mine told me once that you will know when it's time. You'll feel it, and I did. And it's actually, I go back a couple of years, I started to feel that way. What I was looking at is when I could no longer be productive or was no longer felt like I was the right person to be in that chief's job, that would be the time to step down. So I really started feeling it a couple of years ago. I was selfish. I decided to stay until my boys got off the insurance, got on their own, and that happened in the past year. And so that's why it was actually a year ago this month that I told Mayor Trope that I was planning on leaving mid-22, probably in May.
Okay, and like I said, so that was about a year ago, and now it's fine. It has settled in, and when you were going around and talking to everybody, and I watched online when you did your sign off and everything. Did it get a little emotional?
It did. I was in my office before our little carry-in started, and was actually looking at some Facebook comments, and kind of hit me at that point that this may not be as easy as I thought it was going to be. But I think all in all, I held things together and made it through.
Did you plan to bring Bill Calkins with you into retirement, or that just was a timing thing?
No, that was a timing thing. That was actually a surprise to me. Up to about six months ago is when I found out that's what he was looking at, and I'm happy for him. He's done a good job for us.
He's been great. When my wife Ellen was teaching at Baldwin, he was out there with her, and she just thought the world of him. Still thinks the world of him. So, law enforcement today. There have been a myriad of changes since you first started. What's been the biggest change, and what's been the thing that is always consistent?
I'll go with the easy one first, the consistency, and that is we do the same thing now, or they do the same thing now in law enforcement as we have all along. Being in the job for 40 years, you do see a lot of changes, but the bottom line is you are helping people, you're serving people, you're protecting them, enforcing the law, and that basis stays the same. You're dealing with people, and unfortunately most everybody you come into contact with is having a bad day or maybe even their worst day. But that hasn't changed. What's changed for the most part are the tools and the toys and the laws.
And are those all changes for the better, though?
Not all. Technology, most of those changes are for the better, but as everybody's probably aware, the city's going through some issues with technology right now. And when you get used to having a computer in your car and doing your accident reports and your citations digitally, and also your reports, all of that goes out the window when your technology shuts down. So it kind of throws people back into a time where most of them had never policed. I remember when everything was on paper, and you typed reports on a manual typewriter, and or hand wrote them, and I don't know that anybody is left there that did that.
Well, yeah, especially like you said with the recent incident, it's definitely a little bit of a throwback for sure. I think another thing, when we look at how things have changed, is the fact that it's a little different. Police, law enforcement in general, seem to be under more of a microscope. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, that's a fair statement. And that came along with the technology. Everybody's got a phone which has a video camera, and body cameras fortunately gave us the ability to have ours as well, so we could tell the whole story, not just what somebody wants everyone to see. But yeah, that's part of it. And the law side of it, the changes in law, that goes in cycles. I think it's getting close to the time when the pendulum will start swinging backwards in law enforcement's favor. It's just this one's been a pretty rough one, a pretty lengthy segment of time where the law enforcement is being scrutinized, and a lot of people not liking law enforcement, defunding the police and all of that. But I think the pendulum is getting close to starting its way back, and you have that over time. When I started in 1980, I came in on the heels of a rough time when things were good for law enforcement. And
when you talk about that, though, I mean, you look at it and you'll see instances, again, where the camera may show one thing, but from one vantage point, from another vantage point. And I think, when police get into that profession, they're out there, to protect and to serve. That's your job. But as you know, in your profession, any profession, there's always going to be a bad apple or two. There'll
be somebody who shouldn't be doing the job, and you'll have good cops make mistakes. Good cops have bad days. The bottom line is we're people, we're humans, and unfortunately things like that happen. The body cameras give us great evidence of crime. They give us great evidence of officers behaving well and officers not behaving well.
Is being a police officer more difficult than it was 40 years ago?
I would say so, yes. Not just the microscope we're under and the sentiment toward police. It's just the laws are such and the courts are such that you feel more so now, I believe, than before that sometimes you're just going backwards. With the no bond rules in different states and coming here in Illinois, soon, that just puts people back on the street to offend again or to disappear. By and large, people will not reoffend and they'll show up, but you'll have those bad actors that will take advantage of no cash bail. And it's things like that. It's the overloaded prison system, changes in sentencing. It's just, there's some days when I know officers, you wake up and it's tough to go to work because, what are they going to do now?
And as part of that, when you look at, again, over your 40-year career and going up through the ranks as you did, who were the people who you looked up to as you were going through the ranks and really kind of when you became chief, you would say, okay, so-and-so did this, so-and-so that. Who were kind of your mentors in that area?
On the street, there were several experienced officers that I took a lot of things from. There was, excuse me for that.
Okay, it's okay.
Conrad Maddox, old-time officer. When I came on, that I worked with for a lot of years. Scott Finn, Steve Albert, Tom Watercutty, Willie Baker, all those guys that I worked a shift with, Jim Fitch. The list goes on and on. My field training officer, Greg Mahana, taught me a lot. And so working the street, there was a little bit of everything, a little bit of things I took from everyone that I built, my street persona, I guess, around. As a supervisor, I always looked up to Jim Deusterhouse, so as I got into the supervision ranks, that's who I tried to emulate. And as I worked up and became chief, Chuck Gruber, who was an out-of-town candidate that came to Quincy, a lot of people did not care for him because he made a lot of changes. That is why he was here. He was considered a change agent. He was already here for quite a few years when I got on the scene, and I thought he was a good chief. He was a good leader. John Wilson, a great person, and then followed by Mike DeVos. And I picked up things from each one of those chiefs that I used when I was a chief.
I spoke to a former state's attorney years ago, and he had talked about how one of the aspects that he felt when, people are, we talk about, highways and Quincy, when you first started, not a lot of 4-lane roads. And then we ended up 4-lane roads everywhere. You could get everywhere faster. He said, hey, those are great, but this state's attorney always believed that this was also led to more crime. What do you think about that statement?
I would agree, and especially more drugs coming to the community more easily, and drugs and alcohol lead to crime. So yes, I would agree. And in fact, I joked with then Mayor John Spring when he got the second Amtrak train to Quincy. I said, "Great, twice as many gangbangers bringing crack." And he didn't laugh as much as I did.
Yeah, we talk about all the good things, and again, it's great to be able to get to these places quicker. But you're also people can come here, and maybe you don't want them here as much. So, and as you wrap things up, we sit here, and as we're taping this on a Wednesday afternoon, the police chief search appears to be in limbo. I know you're retired, but I know you're still paying attention to it.
Yes. The shape that the police department's in right now without clear leadership is not how I wanted to leave the department when I walked away. I had anticipated that there would be someone ready to take over. And I even knew, when I first believed it was going to be Mr. Lewin, that, it might be a month before he's actually here, but at least there was a plan with Adam Yates being the interim chief. But there's no plan, as you say. There's no decision that has been made. That's frustrating to me, but that's nowhere near the frustration I know that the officers and members, the employees of the Quincy Police Department are feeling. They need to know what the plan is. They need to have clear direction on where things are going. So clearly frustration all around.
And the department, because there are a lot of decisions to be made, because once a new chief is in place, that person has to put their leadership team in. You have to bring in more officers. I know that was one of the things you've talked about, being understaffed for years. There are a lot of moving parts right now, yes. And every day there's not a clear leader for new direction is another day the department suffers, right?
That's true. And 6 months before I left, there were decisions that weren't being made because I didn't want to saddle a new chief with a decision I made that was very impacting, or especially one that involved restructuring in any way. So it's been a long. When the new chief takes the office, it will have been a long time coming for a lot of these changes.
You made like you said, you made your announcement on the heels of Mike Trope getting elected and being sworn into mayor. You said, hey, I'm retiring. When you said that a year ago, did you envision how this would all play out a year later? Any idea?
No, I did not. This last year has just been very unique.
What's been the biggest struggle? What was the big part of the last year that just really made it tough for you to go out the way you wanted to go out?
There seemed to be, and I can't say on whose part exactly or who all's part, but there seemed to be a movement to discredit my administration and me, and I think the end of game would be then discrediting my deputy chiefs as chief candidates. There just seemed to be this overwhelming movement. Things being said that most of them not accurate about the department. There it seemed like someone wanted the department to appear to be in shambles when we got to this point.
Did anyone in the administration ever come to you and say, "These are my issues. This is what I think is wrong with you guys"?
Within the department, there were things that would be suggested, and we would try to adjust those things. And you know, we were having a morale problem in the last year, probably longer than that. I'd be naive to say that some of the decisions I made weren't part of that, but it was much larger than that. It really seemed to hit home when the Safety Act passed, changing a lot of things in law enforcement and the court system. A lot of officers became frustrated. COVID had played a part. There was that was the beginning of us working shorthanded because we'd have people off the shift, and then the city plays a big part in that, in the morale issues. We've been working on our second year. I should say the officers are in their second year without a contract now. A contract that I'm convinced could have easily been put into place last year, and just wasn't done. At the issue lying in the city administration. So all of those things together have created a poor morale. We had officers leaving for a variety of reasons. We lost officers to retirement. We lost officers to the state police and other state agencies besides Illinois State Police. So that creates more of a stressful situation for the officers working the street, a lot more overtime being worked, and not only overtime, but mandated overtime. There was a time when officers gladly came in and gave their time, worked overtime to work the shifts, and now more and more you're having to mandate them in. So a lot of moving parts.
John Spring was mayor, you were the game chief, correct? Or was it Chuck?
Chuck Schultz,
was
still mayor.
Okay. But then you had John Spring come in, who had come in off of being a police and fire commissioner. Right. So he had a working knowledge of that. Mm-hmm. I assume working under a mayor who had sort of been working under that system, and you had you knew very well, mm-hmm. that made for a pretty easy transition, I would imagine.
Yes, it did.
And so then you got Kyle Moore came in, who didn't have that background, only been an alderman for a very short time. And I know you and I discussed that, you and Kyle butted heads a little bit, but you felt by the end of his administration, you felt you had a pretty good working relationship.
Yes, definitely the second term for Mayor Moore was a different term for him and us. And yeah, I felt really good about our working relationship and friendship by the time he was done.
And so now you have, you're going. So this is your fourth. You finished through 4 mayors and 4 administrations, mm-hmm. And again, just the first year of a new mayor coming in with who has had some political background because he was on the county board for a long time, but you never felt that you could get to a point with Mayor Trope that you could work together to solve any existing issues that you felt were there, or that, to be fair, he felt were there.
Not in the year. Had I not been planning to retire, things may have been different. If I knew what was guiding the issues that he and I have had, I could probably answer that better, but I don't really know what was guiding that. A new mayor the first year can always be really, really tough working together, especially a police and fire chief. They are not at-will employees. They're not hired and fired by the mayor, and they make decisions that for the welfare of the community that may not always be in lockstep with the city administration, and that doesn't help things. But again, with such a short window, I would like to think that we would have gotten better if I was sticking around, and things would have gelled better. I made a joke at the beginning when I decided I was leaving a year ago that I didn't have it in me to train another mayor, and That's the truth.
That came to fruition. So, do you? I know again, you believe that the Police and Fire Commission setup works because of that autonomy that it has. The mayor believes the mayor should have more input. In this process, did they try to come up with a happy medium for that, or it just didn't work?
As an outsider looking at that, I think that they did. I think they tried to come up with something, after the failed ordinance giving the mayor the sole power to hire and fire chiefs. I think the commission, from what I saw, was trying to work with the administration.
And again, we're sitting here, and as we record this, there's been no answer yet. From what I understand, that if Mr. Lewin says no, then Adam Yates will get promoted. Is that how it's going to work? Do we know?
I don't know. We're in uncharted territory here. I don't know what's going to happen. One would think that this quickly, that yes, they would go to the next one on the list. I just don't know what that's going to look like.
Well, and again, I know that's not how you wanted to go out. And again, it's easy for you to say, "I'm retired, not my problem," but you're not wired that way. Again, 40 plus years in, 18 years as chief, you have you have friends, you have family there.
Yes.
So you are looking at this, and you wish there would be resolution here.
Yes, I want them to have better than what they have now. I told the officers a couple of different times in different venues as this time was coming, that I wanted them to always have a chief that was better than me. That's what every outgoing chief should want, is that the next person and the person after that, they're going to pick up the bar and go further than where they found it. And this is a big setback for those officers and employees, just hanging out waiting to see what's going to happen. They need somebody quickly to pick up that bar and move it forward.
Well, and again, you're talking about, aside from, there are a handful of positions, and the city's been in a real changeover with a new mayor, a new school superintendent, fire chief, police chief, a lot of moving parts, a lot of changing faces in the leadership of this community.
Yes.
So I think when people look at that, people are resistant to change anyway. But when you get this much of it, it can have a real unsettling impact.
Yes, it can. It can in a lot of ways, and from people of the community all the way up through each one of those organizations.
Well, there will be a resolution soon, we hope, and I know you, like you said, you'll be paying attention, and as we all will. So, Rob, I want to thank you for your time, and again, thank you for your service, and don't be a stranger, and please get some rest before Christy just works you to death again. Okay?
I think I'll be all right.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, thank you.
That's all the time we have for Muddy River News this week. I'm Bob Goff. Have a great week.